please don't leave me here." The words were a crack in the wind, thin, ragged, and close to breaking. The dust had just settled after a hard storm, the kind that sandblasts the sun itself. At the far fence line of the Carter place, a rancher found her face down in the drift along his wire. Her back was a ruin, walt split open by lashes, dried blood crusted in rusty rivers, grit embedded in every cut like the storm had tried to salt her shut. He slid from the saddle, boots sinking into the drifted dust, and when he lifted her, the dress stuck to her skin like paper to a brand. She flinched so hard her breath left her. The afternoon burned clean and bright. The range was wide enough to swallow a man twice, and never bothered spitting. The fence wire sang a low hum in the hot wind, a metal prayer that never learned words. She weighed nothing. He was broad-shouldered and unshakable in the quiet ways, calloused hands, faded hat, a face cut by sun and years. She was all tremble and grit and that dry whisper. He could carry her. She had carried pain farther than most horses carry men. He wrapped his duster around her. Dust shook off in a tired cloud. Her fingers seized his sleeve like she thought the ground might claim her again. "Water," she rasped. He tipped his canteen and steadied her head as she drank. Water streaking mud and blood down her chin. He saw the tracks then, a scatter of bootprints and two long grooves where someone had been dragged. They led back toward town like a handwriting lesson in cruelty. He froze, his eyes narrowed, and then he did something none of us expected. He left his fence ragged and turned his back to the ranch. He carried her to the house. Inside the cookhouse, he heated water and set her near the stove on a blanket, the light falling across her like a bar of gold. He cut the dress from the back, careful, apologizing under his breath to skin that had heard worse and saw the story written there. Lashes counted themselves in purple and black. Some cuts were surface, some deep, some reopened by sand. The storm had ground her raw. He did not say a word that would make him smaller. He cleaned what he could. The cloth darkened. She shivered, jaw clenched. "Easy," he murmured. "Name." Silence. Then Mara. The syllables were sanded thin. "Ben Carter," he said, because names matter when the world tries to erase them. He dabbed a deeper welt. She hissed and he paused. "Better to curse," he offered. "You'll breathe easier." She smiled. A cracked line in dust. Later, he poured coffee for both of them and fed her slow broth. Biscuits softened in the bowl. Every time her hands shook, he steadied the cup. When she could swallow, he asked a question the tracks had already answered. "Who did this?" "Men from town." She said, "3 I know. 2 I don't. They said I talked too much." She blinked away grit. "Said I wasn't worth the water I stole from the creek. Stole dipperful." She whispered for a neighbor's baby with fever. "Water's with the judge now. His paper says who drinks and who don't." Ben's jaw set. Elmsfield had cow hands, Freeman drifters, and a new breed of hyena in clean coats who called theft rights. The water board had been a rumor until the drought made it law on paper and theft and practice. Men with signatures and guns. She reached for his sleeve again, urgency cutting through pain. "They're coming for your water next." Ben's eyes lifted to the window where the tank stood like a promise against the blue. He could keep quiet, keep safe, or ask one more question. He chose the one that costs. "How do you know?" Mara stared into the steam rising off her cup. "Because I heard the names, and one of them wears your brand on his belt for luck. Stay with me, because what happens next changes everything. And if you're watching this without punching that subscribe partner, you're the kind of fellow who borrows a canteen and forgets to bring it back. Don't be that fella." By late afternoon, Mara slept in the spare room, face down on clean sheets, bandaged, a damp cloth cooling her neck. Ben stepped onto the porch. The dust storm had scraped the world so clean you could see tomorrow coming. He followed the bootprints from his fence, Eyes trained by cattle, coyotes, and men who step wrong when they lie. The drags were ugly. A body doesn't make a straight line when it's hurt. It lists toward mercy. The grooves told it where they pulled her, where they rested. Cigarette ash in a little black galaxy where one man's heel dug deep because he carried more guilt than weight. The trail bent toward town, then hooked into a draw behind the old slaughter pen. He found rope fibers stuck to a moss-white thorn and a piece of split cane like the lash they'd used. He pocketed both. Evidence you keep for yourself until you know who to trust. Ben's hands were work thick, built to mend wire and bring calves into the world. The men he was hunting wore boots, paid for by other men's hunger. Different kinds of strength. Different ends. He passed a windmill where his water tank sighed, half full. The creek was a brown vein, shallow fish carved to bones by sun. The water judge had put a lock on the spigot at the meeting. House like it was a bank vault. Folks pretended the key fit. It didn't, not for everyone. The tracks narrowed into town and broke across the alley behind Fletcher's Feed and Loan. There he found drag marks fade and the boot prints divide. Like men who think splitting blame is the same as losing it. Sheriff Tate stepped out of the shade like a dog you fed too many times to trust. Ben, Tate, you looking for trouble, or I found you first? Ben glanced at the alley mouth. I got a woman with a back like a map of hell. I got names I could guess. I got the water judge's lock on my town's throat. Which one sounds like trouble to you? Tate's mouth twisted. You know we're in drought. I got eyes, and you know men get heated. I got ears. Leave it be, Ben. You've got a good spread. Don't put it in the way of what? Men with keys, Ben asked. Level or men with whips? Tate didn't answer. He stepped aside like a man who would rather be coward than corpse. Ben walked past. Some days, that's the only victory a good man gets. Dust blew in like a cool idea. Ben stabled his horse behind Pearl's, the only place in Elm's Field where a coffee and a quiet were still legal. Inside, smoke braided itself with lamplight. Pearl nodded to him without smiling. That was as much safety as this town allowed in public. Ben took the corner table. No whiskey, coffee. He watched the doorway in the mirror and waited for the names to walk themselves in. They did. Vern Lomax, a ranchless rancher with a judge's signature for a brand. Ray Finch, clean boots, dirty heart. Jeb Collies, Ben's brand. On his belt, gift from a roundup 2 summers back, now worn like a grin. 2 others with faces like dead notices. They sat close to the register where Pearl's hand could reach the scattergun, if need be. Vern ordered whiskey like he was tithing. Ray laughed too loud. Jeb kept his head down and his hat on. Gil takes the shape of a brim sometimes. Ben set the split cane on the table, where the lamplight could polish it red. He stood when you fixed wire all your life. You learn where to cut clean. He walked over calm as a man fetching salt. Vern turned, lips already forming insult. Ben dropped a cane in Vern's lap. You dropped your toy. Silence ran around the room, checking faces, measuring courage. Vern picked it up, casual, like it had fallen from God's sleeve. What's that to you? You like a demonstration? Ben asked. I'll show you the marks it makes. I brought the woman too. She's sleeping in my spare room, but she'll wake up for justice. Ray scoffed. You can't prove. Ben's eyes cut to Jeb. He can. Jeb swallowed, looked at Vern, looked at the floor. He didn't speak. Ben leaned in, voice dropping until the lamp had to lean to hear it. You lay a hand on a woman, leave her to choke on dust, then step into my town to drink on it. That's a bad bet, and I don't play the kind of games you win by cheating. Vern straightened, his smile sharpened. We were keeping order. Got a new system for water. Some folks keep talking more than their share. Ben nodded once. Hers was for a baby. Fever. Everyone's got a story, Vern said lightly. Yours ends tonight. Ben answered. It wanders into my yard and then it ends there. The saloon doors clapped. Sheriff Tate stepped in, took a long breath of everyone's trouble, and said, Ben, let's not do this here. Pearl's hand tightened on a scattergun. She didn't raise it yet. You seeing this? That's a room holding its breath. That's the moment where a fella decides if he's a man or an echo. Before the next breath, do me a kindness, tap that subscribe. Good. Now watch. Ben stepped back. Come. Dangerous. Tomorrow at noon, he said to Vern, to Ray, to Jeb, to anyone who was still pretending the sky didn't keep score. At the meeting house, bring your judge, bring your luck, bring the paper that says thirsty is a crime. He walked out before the room remembered how to talk. Morning came clean. Mara woke to pain and purpose. Ben showed her the tank in the trough, the windmill thrumming like an old hymn. She could stand now, slow and careful, blanket around her shoulders. You don't have to, she began. I already did, he said. All that's left is finishing. She met his eyes. They'll take your water, they'll try. She watched him cinch the saddle, every motion measured. Why? Because I heard you say please and meant it, he said, and because I got to live here after. Town gathered like flies on sugar. The water judge wore a starch white vest, a watch chain long enough to measure gall, and key the size of threat. Vern and Ray flanked him like brothers bred in the same bad decision. Jeb hung back, face gray. Sheriff Tate stood in the shade, pretending neutrality didn't smell like fear. Ben set a galvanized bucket down between them. We'll do it simple, he said. You got papers, say you own thirst. I got a ranch, says I own what the wind turns into a drink. That woman's got a back, says you own a lash. Let's see what the town owns. He dipped from his tank, 5 cups, clear enough. You could see your future in it. He handed one to a field hand with lips split by heat. One to a child who stared like he was being tested. One to Mara, who held it with both hands and didn't shake this time. One to Pearl, who had come to see whether men could still be worth the coffee she made. Then he held last to Jeb. Jeb didn't take it. His eyes were on Vern's. Vern's smile said, don't you dare. Ray's grin said, you belong to us. Jeb's hand lifted anyway. He drank. The town watched a man pick side and become less thirsty in more ways than one. The judge lifted his paper voicey. This rancher is in violation of Ben. Cut him off with a louder truth. Say that again, facing her. He pointed to Mara. She didn't hide her back. She turned blanket, slipping to show the ledger of lashes. The square breathed out a sound that didn't sound like people. The judge palled. Vern sneered. Ray laughed. Brittle. Sheriff Tate looked at his boots like they'd arrested someone else. You'll hang for assault. Ben said, bring rope or bring shame. Either will fit. Vern's hand twitched toward his belt. Guns have a way of thinking for fools. Rye reached faster. Pearl's scattergun thunked on the meeting house step. Try it, she said. I dare. You? The judge stepped back, papering like a surrender flag that didn't know how. Tate finally found a spine and stood between bullets that wanted to be born. Enough, Tate said. Vern Lomax, Ray Finch, you'll come with me. We'll have court, not the mirror version. Vern spat. Ray cursed. Jeb nodded. Small enough. Yeah, I know you wanted bang bang. Sometimes the loudest sound is a town choosing who it is in daylight. Stay with me. The last turn still coming. Cord in a mess field was a simple thing when it remembered how. Pearl testified what she'd seen. Mara told enough of her road without turning the knife in it. Ben put the split cane and rope fiber on the table. Jeb spoke, the kind of speaking that steals more breath than a sprint. I helped. He said I ain't proud. I thought going along was easier than not. Tate didn't look at Ben when he said truth costs what it costs. He looked at Vern and lies pay the interest. The judge tried to loft his paper again, but the town had gotten used to faces and backs, not ink. You're done, Pearl told him, which in some towns is law enough. Ben picked up the lock from the spigot where it had sat like a crown on a thief. He lifted the judge's key. This here makes it legal, Ben said. Voice carrying the way fence wire carries a hum. He held them both up, lock and key. Problem and solution, so the square could see their smallness. This here makes it right. He opened the lock and dropped it in the dust. Water ran, not a flood, a pour. Folks lined with cups, hats, hands. The creek breathed again, quieter as if permission was a mineral. Vern lunged one last time at something he thought he still owned, maybe the key, maybe the town. Ben turned, not fast, just certain, and put him on the boards with one punch. That sounded like a gate swinging true. Quiet followed the nice kind. Mara found Ben's hand afterward. Her palm was warm, not shaking. "If you go," she said, "promise you'll come back." He looked at her, really looked, saw the woman who had crawled through wind and lashes, and still said, "Please." Saw a road, saw a home. "I ride circles," he said. "They always swing by where they started." The men face charges. A real judge from real miles away wrote real words that meant something this time. The waterboard's paper burnt slow in a tin wash basin behind Pearl's, and nobody cried for it. Sheriff Tate did his job like it fit again. Pearl kept the coffee strong, the pie stubborn, and the scattergun where everyone could see it without fear. Ben fixed his fence after the next dust blow. Straight, tight, true. Mara walked the line with him. Sun on her shoulders, the blanket traded for a work shirt that belonged to someone who had decided ours was a better pronoun than mine. Her back healed in stripes that would never forget, but they stopped shouting. They learned to whisper truth instead. One afternoon, when the windmill threw a good honest shadow and the tank side full, Mara took a tin cup, dipped it, and drank slow. Water on her lip, sun in her eyes. "You did right," she said. "We did," Ben answered. "Do you think it stays right?" She didn't ask like a doubter, more like a repair woman checking her work. Ben scanned the horizon, the color of a promise that isn't loud if we keep choosing it in daylight. He rode out at sunrise a week later, just a check fence further than usual, or so he said. She watched him go from the porch, the dust trail unspooling behind him, like a ribbon someone decided to keep. He became a stitch on the horizon, like men do when they belong to the distance a little. The morning swallowed his figure, but her small, stubborn smile and that bright quiet told me one thing. This story wasn't ending here.